a glaze is a way in which you thin down paint using medium, and then you layer it up to create the colors that you want. How you make a glaze is you want to have glazing medium. So you can use glazing medium, you can use like a matte medium, you could use a gloss medium. So I'm using glazing medium here. When you make your glaze, you don't need very much paint. So it's like 80% medium, 20% paint. So I'm going to take a whole bunch of medium, put some over here, and then just take like the littlest bit of paint and mix it in. And your glaze, then you want it to be transparent. So as you kind of pull it out, you can see how I can see through that, right? So then as I bring it over these colors, you can see, I might make it a little thicker than that, just so you can see. How it's going to affect the colors that I'm working with. But you can see how these are opaque colors. Maybe you can't see because I'm not having it. These are opaque colors, right? So they're very, very heavy, where this is a glaze, so you can sort of see the white underneath it, right? I have a blue, I can see how I can alter. You can see here where like the red and the blue are mixing. It's a little bit purpley, where the blue and the yellow gold are mixing. There's like a nice shadow tone. It doesn't show up too much on the green because the green is darker. Here, when it's over its own color, it just makes it a little bit bluer. So you can see how all these colors are interacting, right? Now, if you are painting on top of your value study, the first thing that you need to decide and kind of discover is what colors you're going to need. So if I am looking at my apple, so this is like this value study of my apple, and this is my apple, right? So if I'm looking at this, there is probably a little bit of warm red. There's some cool red. There's a little bit of yellow over here. I'm probably going to want a little bit of blue in order to make this shadow. I'm probably going to want a little bit of ochre or yellow up here. Same colors over there. And maybe even a little yellow over here. So I kind of decide what colors I need. And then when I start glazing, I'm going to start with my lightest colors. So I have actually made this. These here are the colors and the glaze and the color and the glaze of all the things I think that I would need to use in my apple. So I would probably use a yellow ochre. That's a yellow ochre glaze. I would use a cadmium red. That's a cadmium red glaze. I would use a cool red. That's what my cool red glaze looks like. I would use a cerulean blue. That's my cerulean blue glaze. Use an ultramarine blue. That's my ultramarine blue glaze. I would use a phthalo green. That's the phthalo green glaze. And so if I were to use all those glazes, I can see sort of like how they interact with each other, right? What would happen if I put a red over a green? It helps to make my shadow. Or if I put a blue over a red, it would make that even darker. So it's just gives me sort of a idea of how all these colors kind of interact with each other. There's some more blue, right? And the more blue I put on it, the darker it makes it. So it's getting even closer to that sort of red. So it just allows me to kind of see how those colors are interacting. I would start with my lightest color glazes first. So I just already glazed in some yellow in here so that so I could let it dry. And then I'm gonna start with my warm red areas. Put in some warm red. I'm gonna put it a little more, but you can see that the value of it, right, is still coming through. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cover this whole thing just so you can kind of see what I mean, where the how the values of the apple. I'm starting thin so that I can always get thicker later. But you can see how the values of the apple and the values that I put on previously are still, and by the values, I mean the black and gray values, right? Are still coming through, and you can see how that little bit of yellow over here and over here and over here have also altered my color a little bit. So there's a little bit of an orange tinge to it. So you can see how I'm starting to add color to it. And then there's some places where I know I want it a little brighter, so I might thicken up my glaze just a tad and add a little more in there. But that's how you start it. So you start with your lightest color, and then you have your values, and then you start sort of like with a base, and then you go from there. And then I'll show you how to put and then say, this is a little bit purpley in here on mine. So I would put like a little bit of a bluish glaze on there. And then this is a little cooler over here. So I might put like a little bit of a cool red on top, but that's how the color starts to come. Okay.
So how many glaze
Following?
layers? Oh, sorry.
How many glaze layers?
Like
Well, it really
on the big painting, how many glaze layers would you say?
So it really depends how much color you're working with. You will have fewer glaze layers if your underpainting is more detailed. But say I want my red like super vibrant, I would put like another glaze layer of red. But then if I like lose some of my values, I might have to bring some of my values back in by like maybe adding a little glaze of blue. So it's really sort of like an adjustment. Like I have to sort of adjust to what my painting needs. So I can't give you like a 100% answer to that, but I would say bare minimum 5.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I've already got 3 on here and it's not anywhere near done.
So I have a question. My
Yes.
study that I didn't do it in black and white. I did it in like green. So I won't be able to, or I don't think I'll be able to paint over it or glaze over it in the same way.
Sure you can. So let me just show you real quick. It won't work exactly like your value scale, your grisaille, but it's just going to shift the color. So if I put red over this, right, this is just a red glaze. It's just going to shift the color. So it's going to be sort of a, it's going to make it darker. Be sort of a weird brown pear, you know. But you see how like that green is still coming through a little bit, but that red is making,
Okay.
it's making it a little bit more brown. So it's still, it's just affecting the color and changing the color. So it's a great way. Glazing is actually a really great way to change the mood of something. Because I just took that and I desaturated it, right? So I took it essentially from like a beautiful, happy pear into sort of like a more muted, not so great zone real quick. And you can just kind of blend it out. We were talking about the other day. So another thing you'll start to put together is that all these things that we talk about start to sort of work in tandem with each other.
So I know we're not meant to use water when making the glaze or painting.
You can use a little bit of water when making the glaze. You can use water when making the glaze.
Okay. My question was kind of like, say we go in with the glaze and we're like, ooh, that's not what I expect. Or say we're painting it all, we go in and we're like, okay, that's not really what I wanted. Is it okay to like go in with water and kind of like, because sometimes I use water to just erase kind of.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Super dry.
Yeah, you can totally go in with water and like erase it or like move it around if you want to. I am telling you things that are sort of like the right way to do it, you know? But it's not the only way to do it. The nice thing about acrylic is that you're not gonna break it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not like you're like blowing glass or something, you know. You're never gonna, you can't really ever hurt it. It's very forgiving. So don't get like uptight about, oh, I'm doing it wrong, you know.
Right.
You can't really do it wrong. I'm just giving you some tips and some skills that will make you less frustrated.
Okay.
In the long run.